One of the guys found this particular video. It's very important. It's how Japanese men are following in the footsteps of South Korean men and fighting the misandry that's in their society. Of course, they talk about feminism here, but this isn't feminism. This is the average woman behaving as women behave. Right. Now it says the samurai strategy of Japanese men against feminism is absurdly bizarre, and it's working. There's nothing bizarre about this. There's nothing observed about this. All it is these men are fighting back. That's why it's working. Now we'll get into this, and I'll correct this guy.
As soon as a woman approaches, they resort to aggression. This is the method many Japanese men have been using to deal with feminism. Feminism in Japan has evolved from heated online discussions to physical confrontations in the real world. Faced with extreme feminism,
Now, oh, there he is. He's the old extreme feminism.
which has turned into misandry, Japan
No, dude. No, this channel's called All Asian Dilemmas. No, it is not extreme feminism. It is feminism. It speaks for women, and the misandry has always been there. You got to correct these guys.
Japanese men have decided to evolve as well, and they've created what they call the samurai duel. In
They're not evolving, they're just fighting back. It's that simple.
short, many Japanese feminists began accusing men of sexual harassment unfairly.
Not, how do you know they're feminist? All these women who claimed false harassment, did they come out and say, Asian Dilemmas, that we're all feminist? No, these are standard women. And before we go any further, I just want to point out one of the guys found this great graph. Accusations of rape are 97% false. 83% was no probable cause. The next biggest chunk was admitted false. And this one was acquitted, right? There's only 3% convictions in this particular case, right? This is just women behaving as women do, right?
Without any evidence. The male response was clear. Whenever a woman approaches suddenly, the man prepares for a confrontation. They resort to aggression because if
Good, good. I'm glad they're doing it.
accused of harassment, they could face up to 3 years in prison. But if it's just a fight, the sentence is only 15 days.
There you go. So if they punch these women in the face, they might get a couple weeks in jail. But if these women get their lies out, it's 3 years of their lives. So they're using their brains.
3 years versus 15 days. Japanese men know well which is the better choice. But how did Japanese feminism reach this point? And how are men reacting?
Again, dude, this isn't Japanese feminism. This is just what women do.
Hello everyone, welcome to All Asian Dilemmas. And today we're going to analyze how feminism in Japan has evolved into physical clashes between men and women. Recently, on a Japanese subway, a girl was so tired that she accidentally bumped into the man sitting next to her. His reaction? He grabbed his phone and hit her hard on the head with it. The girl woke up startled from the pain. A video of this moment went viral, and many people criticized the man. It was just a
Yeah, exactly. These women are a danger to men. As Mr. Pink and Yellow has said over and over again, women are the class enemy of men. That is not an exaggeration. That's the way it is. These women are falsely accusing men. And these men know it, and so they're defending themselves.
light touch. Why be so petty? Even if he didn't want to be touched, that doesn't justify hitting her. Others went further, questioning his masculinity. What kind of man attacks a woman over something so trivial? Social media exploded with debates, with hashtags like #ViolentSubway trending for days.
But it's not trivial. 3 years of your life, and then the rest of your life being destroyed with a bad reputation, that is not trivial.
But beyond the criticism, many Japanese men understood his actions. For them, the issue is simple. They don't want to risk ruining their lives. After all, in recent years, Thousands of harassment cases have been reported in Japan, but more than half were proven false. Many radical feminists make accusations just because a
No, no, they're not radicals. They're not radicals. You think that all these cases were all feminist? No, dude. You're all Asian dilemmas. You're spin doctoring.
man looked at them or tried to strike up a conversation. There are stories of men accused simply for offering help to a lost woman on the street or for accidentally brushing against someone on a crowded train.
Did you hear that? Being helpful, offering help, and their lives are destroyed over that. No good deed goes unpunished.
Common situations in a country where public transport is cramped and inevitably chaotic. And in Japanese courts, a woman's word is often enough.
Well, there you go. And this is why these men are doing it. Men take the law into their own hands when the legal system offers them no recourse. There's injustice in the Japanese system against men of their own country. And so, of course, these men are fighting back. They're taking the law into their own hands.
Even without any evidence, if a woman insists she was harassed, her chances of winning the case are high. And what
You call that justice? I don't.
happens to the man falsely accused? He could face 3 years in prison, pay fines that drain all his savings, and after being released, lose his job and even his family.
So he becomes homeless, right? He loses his job. He loses all the money in his bank account, so he can't get back on his feet. He's jailed. And you know something? As you can hear by the online chatter, people ditch him. People are male hostile. He could lose friends and family. So he's just an ostracized homeless person. So these women are out to kill these men when they do this to them.
In a society where reputation is everything, being labeled a harasser is a social death sentence. Japanese companies, known for their strictness, rarely keep employees with criminal records, even if the accusation was questionable. That's why the man on the subway didn't want to take any chances. He couldn't push her with his hand or say anything. Any gesture could be interpreted as aggression or harassment.
Wow. So he couldn't even kindly push this woman off or even say something to her. Wow. Men are real second-class citizens. Period. I was going to say in Japan, but it's the same over here where I live.
So he used his phone to push her away, an object that, in theory, wouldn't leave serious marks. Because no one wants to risk their life over a simple touch. This case wasn't isolated. In Tokyo, a man was filmed pushing a woman with his backpack after she approached to ask something. In Osaka, another threw a water bottle at a young woman who bumped into him. These incidents, though shocking, reflect the growing fear among Japanese men.
No, it's not shocking. What's shocking is what's been happening to Japanese men. That's what's shocking. What they're doing here makes perfect sense. All Asian dilemmas, if you see this as shocking, you were part of the problem. You are a part of the problem.
Moreover, some radical feminists in Japan have started using false accusations to extort money from men.
No, they're not. They're not extreme feminist or radical. These are just what women do. You think the common woman doesn't leverage, a false accusation against a man? Come on, dude.
Before, men were always at a disadvantage. They had to prove their innocence after being accused, something nearly impossible in a system that favors the alleged victim's word.
Yeah, in other words, women, dude. Just say women. So Japan was no more of a patriarchy than any other country. Patriarchy is a bullshit term. It's gaslighting term. There's never been a patriarchy.
But now, many have decided to act preemptively. If a feminist approaches to falsely accuse them, they
A woman, a regular woman. They don't know if they're a feminist or not.
strike first. And they do so while avoiding vital areas so that even if the police are called, The case is treated as a common fight, and security cameras, ubiquitous in Japan, always show that the woman approached first. Lawyers report that in such cases, judges tend to be more lenient, imposing light fines or short detentions, while harassment charges lead to harsh punishments. In this new war,
But the men shouldn't be fined at all. Woman approaches you. This disgusting system set the situation up. They shouldn't be fining these men whatsoever. This should be 100% considered self-defense.
women end up at a disadvantage. Despite some radical feminists persisting with their tactics, they face unexpected physical resistance. And ironically, it's ordinary women, those uninvolved with extremism, who suffer the most consequences, whether
Shut up. Shut up. Stop your spinning. Stop your gaslighting. Where's your proof that these women who extort these men and falsely accuse them are all feminist, let alone radical feminist? You have no proof of that.
they're from accidental bumps or misunderstandings. But how did Japanese feminism, once one of the strongest in Asia, fall into this decline? At its peak, Japanese feminists no longer wanted equality. They wanted privileges.
They never wanted equality. You've got to stop this, dude. They've never wanted equality. Feminism is a hate movement. And it always has been.
And that's how women-only train cars came to be. The measure, implemented in the early 2000s, was a response to high rates of harassment on crowded trains.
That's a lie, of course, by women. How come there's no men-only buses? There aren't, are there, right? So these women, when they feel like it, go on a train with where men are, right?
Known as Chikan. At the time, it seemed like a victory, a safe space for women in an environment where they felt vulnerable. But over time,
No, it wasn't a victory. It was a victory for them, for the hate movement. They didn't feel vulnerable. They just disliked men. They found men disgusting, didn't want them around.
privilege became a symbol of division. Recently, a woman complained on social media that she bought a first-class ticket and found the other 3 passengers were men. She then demanded women-only cars for this type of train too. The railway company refused, arguing that first class was already a controlled environment with no harassment records there.
Of course, this is bullshit. It's not that there's no harassment. They knew that first class was what? Who has the most money, usually? Usually, it's still men, right? Because they have to work for a living. They have to push themselves up the ladder. So first class would probably have a majority of men. So they would lose. The station would lose money if they booted out men.
Some criticized her, calling her spoiled. If you want that much privilege, pay for a private train. But what few people know is that in Japan, many women hate women-only cars. When there aren't
Tell me more.
enough seats, women in regular cars ask, "Why aren't you in the women's car?" And even inside the women-only car, conflicts arise. Some women attack others' appearances. "You're so ugly you wouldn't even be at risk of harassment in the regular car."
See what's going on here? You see, when there's no men to kick, they turn on one another. That's why I said about the KKK or white nationalists in general. If all the minorities just disappeared today, tomorrow they turn on one another. It's the same thing.
Others complain about perfume smells or loud conversations. There are even reports of physical fights in these spaces, like a case in Kyoto where 2 passengers slapped each other over a seat. That's why many Japanese women oppose these privileges.
You see, there's no men to say, get out. I'm a woman. Get out of the seat so I can sit down. See? You can't say that to other women.
They know that, in the end, these benefits can backfire, creating more segregation than protection. Before the 1960s, Japanese women had a much lower status, treated as their husband's property.
No, they didn't. You liar. Japanese men turned their paycheck over to their wives, and their wives controlled the money. and they'd dole out what do you call that? An allowance to their husbands, just like their husbands were their kids. So you're telling a bold-faced lie. The wives didn't have to work for a living. Their husbands are their servants.
Marriage was a social contract, and divorce was almost unthinkable. They had no voice, neither in the family nor in society.
They had entire voice. You're lying.
But with the economic boom, they gained access to education and began fighting for equal rights, influenced by Western feminism.
No, no, no. Not for equal rights, you liar. They are fighting for attacks against the men in their society. Not even privileges. They're attacking the men in their society. They attacked them when they became housewives instead of working alongside their men and going to war with them.
Especially from the United States, where the civil rights movement was in full swing. Back then, women wanted real equality, like the right not to be
No, no, no. They wanted privileges and they want their men harmed. Stop lying.
discriminated against in the job market, and to earn the same wages as men. This allowed many of them to achieve financial independence. Then came
If they wanted to earn what the men earned, they would have to do what men do. Get in the rat race and succeed. They didn't want that.
the economic bubble of the 1980s and early 1990s. Japan grew rapidly, and with that, salaries soared. With more money, consumption skyrocketed. And as the biggest consumers, women began gaining privileges. They not only had the
They were always the biggest consumers, dude. If they were second rate to men, how come we're the biggest consumers? Hey, they didn't make as much money as men, so how could they consume? Because the husband's money was their money.
their own incomes, but also had men spending money on them, whether on dates or gifts. Whoever controls the economy controls the rules. It was at this moment that Japanese feminism stopped seeking equality and started
No, no, I got to say this over and over again. You're lying constantly. Don't ever give credence to this hate movement.
demanding advantages. Romantic relationships began to be measured by money. If a man wanted to go out
Began. You're delusional, dude. You think they weren't marrying their daughters off to the highest status men in the past before this? You think this is brand new? Man, oh my God. Heads in the sand.
out with a woman, he had to pay for dinners and give expensive gifts, jewelry, designer bags, trips. And even then, he often ended up as just a plan B. There was even a term for it: ATM boyfriend, a man used as a cash machine. Back then, it was common for
Yeah, thanks for me. You're truthful here. Women don't want to be with men. Men have to bribe them. Men have to bribe women into their lives. That's right.
women to date multiple men at once, keeping a main one and others as backups. This created a gender imbalance. Less wealthy men, or those unwilling to spend, were excluded from the dating market, while richer ones found themselves exploited. Even in the workplace, feminism
Wow. So how are these women all feminists then?
reached extremes. If a boss sent too many emails to a female employee, he could be accused of harassment. If a colleague offered coffee and insisted after a refusal, he risked the same. In a Tokyo company, a manager was fired after complimenting a subordinate's hairstyle. She claimed it made her feel objectified. If a man
Yeah, she has total dominance. The average woman has total dominance in the workplace. So, dude, for your bullshit about women being property and all that horror, I mean, that's disgusting for you to say. They always had this kind of social dominance.
man tried to talk to a woman on the street and persisted after the first no, he could also be accused. In some cases, women weaponized this. They'd reject a man publicly, and if he reacted poorly, shout
No, not in some cases. Women have weaponized their sexuality against men since the dawn of time.
Harassment to humiliate him. But this era of female privileges was sustained by women's purchasing power. When the economic bubble burst in 1990,
Nonsense. Nonsense. These men are fighting back. That's what's stopping it. That's what's stopping it. It has nothing to do with money. Okay, how much more do we need to go? Okay, I better finish the whole thing, but this guy's pissing me off.
everything collapsed. Consumption dropped, and companies started laying off employees. Even without gender discrimination, the market began valuing only the most productive, and women, who often worked fewer hours than men due to domestic responsibilities, lost.
No, no, no. They were in domestic responsibilities because it was the easier gig. Don't give these women an out. The men have to all hold up society. That's where the supposed wage gap comes in.
Lost ground. A University of Tokyo study showed that between 1992 and 2000, the female unemployment rate rose 15%, more than the male rate. The men who stayed were workaholics,
Yeah, exactly, because they could leech off a man, dude.
with no time or money to pay for dinners and gifts. Many started living for work, sleeping in capsules, or even at the office. Suddenly, many Japanese women began dreaming of being housewives again. They no
Well, there you go. There you go. Right? Men are forced to be in the workplace. Women have an option. That's why.
longer wanted privileges. They just wanted a husband with a stable job to take care of the home. Surveys from the time
For them to leech off. That's what taking care of a home is. They get a male servant.
showed that in 1995, 60% of women aged 25 to 35 said being a housewife was the ideal, a jump from the 30% of the previous decade. But a small group of radical feminists continued down this extreme path, promoting gender conflict.
No, no, no. No, not a small amount. This isn't feminist. Women with money. In other words, the women that still were successful, they could still kick their heels up and attack men. The women who married these men, they despise the men as much as these women you're calling feminist. It's just that they have to pretend. They have to wear a mask saying, I love you, baby. Now work for me.
They organized protests, like the famous Silent March in 2010, where women walked through Tokyo streets with signs calling all men potential predators. They published online articles.
If there are non-feminist women out there, how come there wasn't an equal amount or any women that were protesting against them? When they run into a group of women with signs saying the opposite? No. Because the average woman at home supports this. She's an enabler.
Articles labeling marriage modern slavery and encouraged harassment reports even without evidence.
They're right, though. It is slavery. Slavery for the man.
And the men reacted. Now these feminists face an aggressive response. On forums like 2Channel, Japanese men share tactics to protect themselves from false accusations, like recording all public interactions with women or avoiding eye contact on trains.
Now, if they were smart, they'd be doing what South Korea men do. They would be entering as a group and putting their money into politics. Because you think I want to live this way? Do you think I want to have to record everything in order just to live a normal life? That is some real second-class citizen bullshit there.
Others go further, embracing the samurai duel as a form of preemptive self-defense. In an anonymous interview, a 32-year-old man said, "If I know she's going to lie about me, I'd rather the lie be about a fight than harassment. At least that way, I'm out in a week." The problem is that, in the end, it's regular women who suffer the most, those who
He's full of shit. Regular women aren't suffering at all. Are regular women being thrown in jail and having their reputations destroyed? No.
Just want to live their lives normally. A 19-year-old student in Nagoya said she avoids crowded trains because she fears being targeted by a misunderstanding. If I bump into someone, he might hit me, and I can't defend myself. Another woman, a 40-year-old office worker, said she stopped using women-only cars because the other women judge me like I'm weak for being there.
Really? So this, what does that got to do with the men, right? Or feminism? She found that in female-only cars, there were there were no men to be the punching bags, and she had to deal with these women's dominance and aggression on her own. She was the target for a change.
Feminism should fight for equal rights, not create divisions. When it began, the movement brought real progress.
Real progress. Yeah, the KKK should fight for equal rights and not division, right? Okay, that's as far as I need to go. It's pretty well at the end. I had to stop this thing over and over again. This channel, all Asian, what do you call it? Situations or assumptions or whatever. It just told lie after lie. That's why I have to show this and debunk it. You should be ashamed of yourself, dude. Anyway, we'll end it here.